Greetings. Here's a few hints and information for the next literary criticisms that we're going to be reviewing in week 4. The first one is historical and new historical literary criticism. This approach analyzes a literary work by examining the historical context in which it was created. This method argues that a text cannot fully understand as its meanings is shaped by the social, political, economic, and cultural forces of the time. Here are some guidelines for interpreting a piece of literature using historical and new historical literary criticism. First of all, we need to look at the author's life and times. We can do this by investigating the author's biography, personal experiences, and the historical events they lived through. How might their life have been influenced by their writing? Look at the period when the work was created. Explore the historical period and what were the major political events, social movements, scientific discoveries, or philosophical ideas of the time. Consider the prevailing social norms, gender roles, class structures, and the power dynamics. We also need to look at the cultural and intellectual climate. What were the dominant artistic, literary, and intellectual trends of the era? Was the text a response or a departure from those trends? How did that work engage with the big ideas of its times? Then we need to analyze the text itself. What were the explicit and implicit historical references that you may have found? Were there certain figures, events, or ideas within the text that was provided? And how do these particular references contribute to the work's meaning? We also need to look at the characters in the setting, analyze how the characters and the setting reflect the historical period. Do the actions of the characters, their beliefs, and social positions align with or challenge the norms of their time? How does the setting, whether it's specific, city, area, country, estate, battlefield, how does that reflect the historical reality? We also need to look at language and style. Was the language and literary conventions used in the text? Are there some particular words, phrases, or different rhetorical devices that were common during that period? And how does the author's style reflect or resist the literary trends of their time? We can examine power dynamics and ideology on how the text represents the social hierarchies and dominant ideologies. Does the work reinforce or critique the prevailing beliefs about class, race, gender, or nationality? New historicism, in particular, focuses on how a text is complicit or subverts the power structures of the time. Our analysis should also show how historical content illuminates the text's themes, characters, and plots. Remember that the historical context does not completely determine a text's meaning or theme. New historical analysis should not claim that the text is merely a product of its time. I want to remind you that all your claims within the text should be supported with specific examples, direct quotes, and detailed descriptions from the literary work itself, as well as proper citations and references. This will demonstrate that your interpretation is grounded in the text.